Welcome to Get Green, Northwest Indiana, your home for lawn care solutions with Steve Daly. Each podcast, you'll learn the secret tips to growing healthy green grass and best practice solutions for watering, weed and feed, aeration, and mowing. Here are your hosts, Steve Daly and Jim Jano.
So Steve, today we're going to talk about my fourth application. As you know, you just finished aerating my yard, core aeration, and then you came back right afterwards and you fertilized it. What did you do this time on the fourth application?
Oh, it's pretty similar to the one we do with the third. We're just trying to provide potassium, low amounts of nitrogen, trying to green it up a little bit, not get too crazy because you don't want to force a lot of upgrowth when Mother Nature's not helping you out, and spraying weeds. It had Milorgnite in it, some iron, so we're trying to put some bionutrients down again and just keep the lawn holding its own until we get to the fall months where we can really hit it with a good rate of nitrogen to get it built up for next year.
So application 4 is somewhat of a maintenance application where you're really not trying to reinvent anything. You're just trying to keep it healthy and strong and let it transition into the next cycle.
Right. We're not trying to create a whole lot of upgrowth at the end of August, beginning of September. We want to wait. We'll start creating that, especially when it was sitting in the 80s. We spent the last 2-3 weeks before we got the recent rain well above normal temperatures, very dry conditions. So we need our people to water, and we don't want to make the application that we do be something that's going to be detrimental to what they're doing.
Now, Daly's tips. You have Daly's tips on all your communities, and it's on your website, and you have a lot of tools on there. But the thing that you updated just last week was that you're not necessarily treating every lawn if they're not keeping up with maintenance because it's not good for them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, if there is nothing, if people aren't watering, we can't treat their stuff. That's what it comes down to. I mean, you try to use discretion each time you're there, but sometimes you've got to save the homeowner from themselves a little bit, I guess. They want you to spray the weeds. They want you to be there, but the lawn's completely dormant, spraying the weeds, fertilizing it. That's a tough thing to call for. So,
and you're not afraid to make unpopular decisions. If it's in the best interest of your customer, I actually think that's kind of refreshing because sometimes you don't need to be told what you want to hear. You need to be told what you need to hear. And I was guilty of that. I thought I knew everything about lawns because I read a lot. And I made a lot of mistakes over the years. And I didn't like hearing you're not watering like, but I'm sure, I'll tell you what, anybody that's seen my yard this year, it's much greener than most. And it's not because I'm smart.
No, I mean, the key is water. And most people, if they would just grab a hose and do it properly, they would make their lawn care program be so much more efficient for them. If you're not investing, say, $40-50 a month in the water that is required to get you through the summer when it's really dry, it's almost pointless to some degree. I mean, yeah, most of the time lawn is resilient and will come back. This year it looks like they're not being as resilient in some areas as most. So,
well, it's been a tough year.
Oh, Jano, we're going to talk about this year's nightmare.
Yes, we are, Steve. So, Steve, this has been a very stressful year for you. And anybody that knows you care a lot about your customers' lawns. And this has been really hard on you this year. And you had nothing to do with it other than trying to minimize the stress on people's lawns. What's going on? What happened this year?
Yeah, well, it was very hot, very dry, very weird, very everything. Perfect culmination of a lot of different things. One of the most difficult, challenging years I can remember, between the humidity creating disease, Then the flip to the dryness that's just tortured everybody's lawn, and the heat that has just been constant all year. But the last month of September has been maybe even the worst of it. I mean, even last weekend where we were, 14 degrees above normal all weekend long. And, it's not just us. I mean, if you've heard the stories of basically the whole United States has been hotter than normal all year long, with the exception of certain parts. But most everything we're dealing with has been extreme heat, warm soil temperatures, dry turf, diseased turf, if people maybe overwater, underwater, thick thatch. So it's just been all sorts of different things. And Mother Nature with a healthy dose of kicking up some moisture at the wrong times early on, to a point where it created a lot of disease issues. Yeah, an incubator. So yeah, it's been a challenge.
Well, your dilemma actually started last year. Last year we had lawn fungus, and it was bad. And at the beginning of this year, I remember the first time we did a podcast, I was like, well, I bet you glad that this year's a new year. And you said it's not getting any better because we didn't have enough winter to blast out last year's fungus and diseases.
Yeah, and that was just part of it, and all the soil temperatures being up, all the constant pressure on turf has been a challenge. People who have, say, patches of bent grass in their lawn, blah blah. I mean, all that stuff's taken a beating this year. People who didn't water their fine fescues. It's been interesting.
Well, so it starts with we didn't blast last year's fungus. So we start off this year with things holding over from last year. So they got off to an early start. Then we had
insect disease pressure.
Yep. Insect disease pressures. And what else happened this year? I mean, there was like the perfect storm. Literally everything went wrong, did go wrong. And it was one after another. So we didn't even give our grass a chance to, unless you're watering and cutting correctly and staying on top of it. But even then, some of the better lawns you see that look like they're very healthy green, you said, no, there's signs that they've
you can walk into them and see different things going on. It's been a challenge. The lawns that did best were actually the ones that were smartly watered. Not over irrigated. You go from the people who, won't pull a hose. That's one thing. But then the ones that want to just, hey, my irrigation system runs 4 days a week. That's the way my guy set it up. That can be just as bad as letting your lawn be dry, because then you're actually creating the incubator. The more you keep going down that pattern, the further from where we need to be the lawn got. I'm not saying that all irrigation systems are set up wrong or whatever, but if I get my hands on somebody's timer, I generally change it probably 60% of the time. So I mean, it's one of those things where deep watering, infrequent watering, do not create disease problems. Do not create insect issues. Keep the stress off your lawn. Do the smart things for it. I've seen lawns get disease that have been healthy forever. They just, because of the amount of pressure and the amount of stress that they were under. So
now, besides the Daly's tips on your community pages, and you have you got them for Crown Point, Chesterton, Valpo, LaPorte, DeMott, Lake County, LaPorte County, Porter County. You got a lot of good information out there, a lot of good helpful tools and stuff like that. But, I love the document that your tech leaves at my door, because it basically gives me something to think about what I need to be doing to make sure that I'm doing my part. And I was looking at one of the things is, first of all, it says that my weeds will discontinue in 1 to 3 days. I actually didn't even know I had that many weeds, but it's nice to know that he saw them.
I don't know if I'd use the word discontinue, but okay, I get what he's trying. Basically, dissipate would probably be start to die. would be the word that I would probably use.
Well, is it discoloration maybe?
It could be. I can't read his handwriting.
Well, he's a good technician.
That's why we've got this 20 million point checklist. So if you can't read your technician's handwriting, you can go to the troubleshooting guide and see what else he has to say.
Well, just
to
underneath his handwritten note is your note, or at least it's from your inside team, and it says lawn care tips. And the first thing it says is water once every 5 to 7 days. I've never heard you talk about the importance of watering before.
Never. Never.
So it says 1 to 1/4 inches of each for each area of your lawn. Now, another thing that you have on here is, it recommends the rain gauge as well. But
that's so you can measure that 1.5 inches, because I've heard and 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches means in each area, not through your whole lawn. I've had people do that too, where they've, applied 1/10 of an inch here, 1/10 of an inch there, and they've managed to water that.
Hey, careful. I was once that person,
So, I mean, that's why the rain gauge is offered up, so you can measure it in one spot,
so they can
one
get a
good
visual.
good solid watering, as opposed to, yeah.
Well, here's another thing you seldom ever talk about: the importance of mowing your lawn correctly. It says that, and I'm joking, folks, it says that I need to keep my lawnmower at the highest setting. I guess smart things are worth mentioning over and over and over again.
3.5 to 4 inches would be great. I mean, 3.5, if it's maintained at 3.5, usually you're good. 3 3/4 to 4. The longer it is, the more water available to it, the better off it's going to be. Remember, your grass plant's 80% water plus. So water is the most important thing you can give it. And keeping it, the mowing high will also help shade the roots and keep the ground a little bit cooler.
Okay, the next thing, the final thing on your lawn care tips is, and we just spoke about this in the last one, that we're getting to the time of year where it's the best time to attack weeds.
Yes.
And you have written here that don't pull weeds because you've treated them. And if they're pull weeds, it's not allowing your application to do its job.
You could pull them after it's sprayed. Don't pull them before it's sprayed.
Oh, I see, because you're leaving the weed in
right.
the ground.
I mean, once it's translocated to the root, if you want to pick at it, you can, but you got to let it, give it a few days and let that thing start curling up or do whatever. Then if you want to pick at it, you can. At least then it's already, moved into the root and started controlling the plant. If you are picking weeds prior to us getting there,
you're helping the weed.
You can't spray what you can't see.
Yeah.
You didn't pull the root. You pulled the top growth of the plant, most likely in any case when you're trying to pick a weed. And the root is left behind. So if we leave and it grows up from that root, well, you won't see us till the next time.
Well, no podcast would be complete without me telling the horror stories of my yard. And before the BP, before Perma-Green, and I would pull weeds, and it didn't matter what I did, they would always come back. And I thought I read somewhere that those weeds could be 6-7 feet into the ground, and I'm just pulling off the surface. And when you guys came in, my weeds left. And that's because I was pulling weeds and leaving them in the ground, and you were killing them where they lived.
Right. You got to get the root, regardless of whatever the depth is, whether it's but
how deep can they go?
Depends on what the plant is. I mean, some shallow root, some deeper root. A thistle can get a pretty deep root. A dandelion can get a pretty deep tap root if it's out of control and has never been sprayed. You just want to make sure that you spray it repeatedly until you control it. That's really what you do. And then once the lawn's cleaned, you just maintain it. But
here's a question for you. So I've got a neighbor, nice guy, but he's got a young child and he's not fertilizing his yard yet. At least I hope the word "yet" is applicable, because he doesn't spray his yard. And there's a line of weeds on the other side of my yard, my property line.
mm-hmm.
Is there anything does that require extra effort on my part? Because there are a lot of weeds, or is your normal applications kind of taking that in consideration?
You're going to keep weed control probably in a situation where you've got that kind of weed pressure. I mean, if we've got 95% control of your lawn, you can usually, and that's usually what happens, is it stays pretty much to the property until it germinates in, then you spray it again, or moves in through, rhizomes or however it spreads into the lawn, then you control it again.
So the best defense to a neighbor that doesn't control their weeds is just hire a good professional and
just keep spraying
and just keep the application going and let the pros take care of it.
Yep. Get rid of them, and and you can see how it pretty much stays to a line as you described. It stays off of the property for the most part, and that weed controls work. They do their job, and it gets down the root. And someday, hopefully, your neighbor realizes that if he wants to control his weeds, you can get in there. People get concerned about whether it's chemically safe, is it environmentally conscious? Well, controlling the noxious weeds and creating a better lawn is actually okay for the environment, creates more oxygen.
I was going to say, I think I'm breathing a little bit better air with all my grass than he is without.
No, I mean, it does help with that. Now, the one thing, if you control weeds, yes, there's less things for the pollinators to feed on. I get that. But that's why, if you got a nice extensive landscape, they got plenty of things to do. And if you're using the right grub controls or insect controls, you're not going to affect the pollinators. So that's just, trying to use smart lawn management.
Well, and he has actually complimented your work, and he has said that when his daughter gets into preschool, that he was kind of excited about having you get started on his lawn. So he definitely can appreciate my lawn and what you've done to it, because he's made a few comments. And you respect everybody's having different opinions. Do I agree with them? Maybe not. But he's a nice guy.
The thing is once you get the lawn cleaned up, again, like we've talked, you're not just hitting it with weed control every time. You're not trying to be irresponsible about your treatments. You're trying to be conscious of your environment and your surroundings. So you're spraying in such a way as you spray the weeds that are present. You're not going to control what's not there. So you're not. Once the lawn would be cleaned up, it would be basically just a fertilization practice and spot spraying weeds, and that's where a lot of homeowners say, when they're saying they're environmentally concerned, that's where their hang up is that they think you're just throwing things everywhere all the time, and that's just not the case.
So we just finished our 4th application.
Mm-hmm.
But we're about to get into the most important part of the year for lawn maintenance, and that's
2 more left.
That's the fall applications.
Fall application, winterizing application, where you supply all your nitrogens using for the storage of the plant to be there next spring. So,
and that is the most important.
That's the most important.
So right now it's maintenance, and next is
when you were serviced about 2 weeks ago. That was like the last of the maintenance application, so to speak. And now, as we get rain and the cooler temperatures, we're going to start hitting it good with nitrogen and try to get everything back to where it was, or as much as possible after such a stressful year. So.
Well, Steve, we really appreciate you taking time to tell us what Perma-Green does on their 4th application and what the homeowner can do to make sure that they're optimizing what you're doing. And where can I learn more about Perma-Green?
www.perma-green.com.
Well, thanks again, Steve. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge about 4th application lawn care.
That was nothing. That was more knowledge about other things. Because that's what's important this time of year. Make sure you're watering, make sure you're mowing right, and let's get it to fall so we can get everything going in the right direction for 2025.
All right, well, hopefully it'll be a better year than this year, because this year has been brutal.
It's been tough. It's been a real tough year. Yeah.
Happy green lawns, everybody.
Thanks, Jano.